to explain it and lead up to the question.
All right.
Go ahead.
My book is called The Ascendancy. It deals with Inca prophecy, the Bible code, the Hopi prophecy, the blue star Kachina, the Mayans, the tree of life, everything you've talked about tonight. What occurred to me after I read your book when I was doing research, when I was outlining my novel, was that all of this comes down to something very simple, and that's the heart and compassion and love for one another. And when 9/11 happened, there was a moment right after 9/11 where there was worldwide compassion for us.
Yeah, there was.
And you could feel it. And I'm 62 years old, and the only time I think I have ever felt anything like that was the assassination of John Kennedy.
Yeah.
And it was a period, it was solid. You could feel it. And it was so powerful, the compassion and the love. And then when that speech was given to go to war against the world, it was like the gate closed for a temporary period of time. And I'm wondering, you know, and I look at these structures, these geometric structures, as having a form. Does 9/11, that come into a geometric form structure that we are going through right now, or is that kind of just a prelude outside? Is it part of it?
Well, you can look at everything geometrically and predict time and dimensions and everything. I mean, you can really get into it if you want. But 9/11 was set up by people that, if you want to talk about conspiracies, it's one of the biggest ones ever.
I agree.
And you know, they didn't care about us at all. That's another thing that was not. It is not. It's an illusion. The whole thing was an illusion. There was something else far beyond that, and it was all secret government stuff.
Did you feel, you know, as I had mentioned after that was one of the high points of world compassion?
Well, it really was. The point when the German battleship came across one of our ships and they lowered their flag, and you know, that they were really deeply respecting us, and we had a great chance to unite the world at that moment, but we had a really bad leader that didn't know how to do it, and didn't care anyway, because they you know, I mean. Bin Laden didn't have anything to do with this.
Wow. George, can I ask Drunvalo one other question?
One more, sure.
Okay, thank you very much, George. I'm really upset because I'm so pleased to speak with you. December 31st in 1989, I was in a seminary studying to be a priest for 2 years. I've always led a very spiritual life. I was a teacher. I taught for years, taught high school and college. And in 1989, December 31st, somebody took me. I was going through an agnostic, almost atheist period, and somebody an age-old friend, an old girlfriend, I hadn't seen in 25 years, took me on a guided meditation. And while I was on the meditation, I was seeing space and stars, and I saw a Viking ship with a jib sail filled with wind. And what happened is a four-sided pyramid rose up in front of me. This happened in a millisecond. It did a 90-degree turn. The tip of the pyramid was the most brilliant white light, the top of the pyramid, that I've ever seen in my life. It went into my forehead. It pierced my head. My entire body lit up with light. And the pyramid wasn't an image like you have in a dream. It was solid, like a solid table, or like the furniture or a chair that you sit on. It had that solidity. And my arms and legs wrapped around the pyramid, and it was like every cell in my body lit up with light. And this happened in a flash of a second. And I woke up, I looked up with the start, and the meditator said, you know, I said, what the hell was that? And she said, what? And she said, and I described the pyramid to her and what it did, and she said, that's your third eye. And I said, what's the third eye?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of my awakening.
Well, what you're describing, though, is a little more than just the third eye. This is what the Egyptians called the halls of Amenti. And it's something I'd have to sit down with you for about an hour and explain it, but it's a particular level of consciousness. It's very specific.
Very high, too, it seems.
Yeah, it is. And it was actually a man-made level of consciousness that the Egyptians made a long time ago. But I can't, I don't have the time to be able to really do that right now.
We're going to Switzerland now on the international line. Johann, thank you for calling. Hi there.
Hi, thank you for letting me talk to Drunvalo.
Sure thing.
I wanted to ask a question of you, Drunvalo.
What's your
Egyptian...
Johann.
Johann. Okay. Hi.
From St. Gallen. I was going to ask you about the Egyptian temples along the Nile and how they're set up and how they pay homage to a spring in the far west regions of the world that I've traced down to Tarpon Springs, Florida. And have you any information on that, how the shape of the temple indicates that you got to go through the Pillars of Hercules, out the ocean, over to a palm tree forest, and then find a sacred spring?
Well,
have you heard anything about
I don't know that one specifically, but the Egyptians were all over the world. This is clear. I've seen their hieroglyphs in Australia on both the eastern and the western sides. They've been in the United States. They've been in the Grand Canyon. They're right here behind the Sedona, and they have very special things that are built where they can actually walk through them and end up in Egypt. And they're really real. They're here. We've done a lot of research with this stuff, and the military now has confiscated all these places. You can't even go into them anymore. But the Egyptians were not fixed just there. They had spread out all over the world in various ways. And you could actually see hieroglyphs where you see the earth and you see the polar caps exactly to the right size and everything all over. So, I mean, they had to have explored the world more. But in terms of how they got to that place in Florida that you're talking about, which I have heard about, but I don't know really. I don't know that one. The Egyptians were amazing people, and every of those temples were set up exactly the same way that the human chakra system was set up in the body. And although some of those temples have been moved, like Philae, for example, and they've actually had to move them because when they flooded the Nile, and that changed the energetics dramatically. But those kinds of things are possible, so I would have to look carefully at what you're saying, and but knowing what I know about them, it's possible.
What happened to lost knowledge? Even though through some texts we have information, but basically it seems to be gone or hidden.
Here's the other thing. The Hopi, the Mayans, the Kogi, the Arhuacos, the Wiwas, the Kangwarmos, and the Tibetans all say that they came from Atlantis. And they're adamant about it. It's not a maybe. And during Atlantis, we did something which had to do with a specific pyramid that was built off the coast of Bimini, which at that time was part of Atlantis. And we misused this energy, which split apart the dimensional levels of the Earth and caused us to drop in consciousness. And it also caused us to lose our natural Mer Ka Ba fields, which then, when the magnetics went to zero, and then we lost our memory, and then the poles shifted, and we were just totally devastated by that, and so all of our memory was lost. But what happened was that there were the ascended masters that started all the way back in Lemuria, and there was a few thousand of them, and they were living in the underground city underneath the Great Pyramids, which has now been discovered. It's 6 miles wide, 8 miles wide, 6.5 miles wide, 8 miles long, and 12 stories deep, one solid building. And in there was where the Thoth Brotherhood lived, and still some of them are still in there. And there is so much that has happened, but these guys sat there and waited until not 13,000 years, which is where we are now.
Yeah.
But there's a quadrant. There's another place at the four directions, and at about 6,000, a little over 6,000 years ago, that's when we had reached this place where they were able to come back and